You know, there's a moment in every data analyst's life where you stare at a spreadsheet and realize the numbers aren't just digits, they're a crime scene. For me, that moment didn't happen in a corporate boardroom in Seattle. It happened standing in front of a mahogany desk in the middle of the woods, looking at a woman who had stolen 1,200 acres of my family's history and turned it into a gated community for people who drive cars. That cost more than my college education. She smiled at me, this perfectly coiffed, terrifyingly polite woman named Evelyn Sterling, and told me that I was the one trespassing, that I, Mason Thorne, standing on the dirt my grandfather Silas bought with blood, sweat, and army payback in the 50s, was the intruder. It takes a lot to make me angry. I'm a forensic accountant by trade. I look for patterns, for missing pennies, for the quiet little lies companies tell the IRS. I'm used to cold facts. But when Evelyn told me to run along like I was a lost child, I felt a kind of heat in my chest that I hadn't felt since I was a kid. It wasn't just anger. It was clarity. I realized right then that I wasn't just going to take my land back. I was going to take apart her entire world, brick by golden brick. Welcome to the story of how I inherited a forest, found a fraudulent country club, and ended up in the biggest legal brawl of my life. If you're listening from your cubicle or your car, buckle up and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours. Because let me tell you, the fight is ugly, but the victory, it's sweet. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of gray, rainy Tuesday Seattle is famous for. I was buried in a forensic audit for a tech startup when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Usually, I ignore those, assuming it's a scam about my car warranty, but for some reason, I picked up. It was a lawyer named Marcus Vane. He sounded old, tired, and serious. He asked if I was the grandson of Silas Thorne. I hadn't heard that name in 20 years. My parents divorced when I was 5, and my dad, bitter and broken, cut ties with his father. Silas was a ghost to me, a vague memory of a flannel shirt and the smell of pipe tobacco. Vane told me Silas had passed away back in 2017. But the estate had been stuck in probate hell because they couldn't find me. Apparently, I was the sole heir, and the inheritance wasn't a box of old photos. It was 1,200 acres of prime, lakefront wilderness in the Cascade foothills. I nearly dropped the phone. 1,200 acres. In this economy, that's not land. That's a winning lottery ticket. Vane told me the taxes had been paid automatically from a trust, so the land was safe. But he warned me, and his voice got real low when he said this, that there were irregularities regarding the current usage. He wouldn't say more over the phone. He just told me to drive out there and see for myself. So I did. I took the weekend off, packed a bag, and drove 3 hours east, watching the gray city melt into green timber. I was expecting wilderness. I was expecting a rusted gate and maybe a collapsing cabin. I was imagining hiking, boots and silence. What I found was a paved, 4-lane entry road with a massive stone archway that read, Whispering Pines Estates. I pulled my beat-up Subaru onto the shoulder and just stared. There were manicured flower beds. There were iron gates that looked like they belonged at Buckingham Palace. And there was a guard shack, a literal guard shack with a guy in a uniform who looked like he took his job way too seriously. I checked my GPS, according to the deed coordinates Vane had sent me. I was currently parked on my own property. The gate, the road, the guard shack, it was all sitting on land Silas Thorne had bought in 1954. I drove up to the gate. The guard stepped out, hand on his belt, looking at my car like it was a contagious disease. Can I help you, sir? This is a private community. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm looking for the property line of the Thorne estate. He frowned. Thorne, never heard of it. This is Whispering Pines. Unless you're a guest of a resident, you'll need to turn around. I'm not a guest, I said, holding up my phone with the digital deed. I'm the owner. According to this map, you're standing in my driveway. The guard didn't even look at the phone. He just radioed the main office. I've got a confused individual at the north gate. Says he owns the place. He paused, listening to an earpiece, then looked at me with a smirk. President Sterling says to send you up to the clubhouse. Follow the main road, don't stop, don't take photos. He opened the gate. I drove through, and my jaw hit the floor. This wasn't just a few squatters in tents. This was a full-blown luxury development. I passed row after row of rustic chic cabins that probably sold for $500,000 a pop. There were Teslas in the driveways. There were kids riding expensive bikes. I counted 40, maybe 50 houses. Then I saw the clubhouse, a massive timber and stone structure overlooking the lake. There was a marina with boats that cost more than my apartment building. And the worst part, as I walked down to the water's edge near the clubhouse, I tripped over something. I knelt down and brushed away the pine needles. It was an old, cracked concrete foundation, small, maybe 20 by 20 feet. I froze. I had a sudden, violent memory flash being 4 years old, sitting on a wooden porch, watching my grandfather gut a trout. This was it. This was Silas's cabin. They had bulldozed it. They had scraped his life off the earth to build a yoga deck for the marina. That's when the sadness evaporated and the cold, hard rage set in. I took a photo of the foundation. Then I marched up the stairs to the clubhouse. Evelyn Sterling was waiting for me in an office that looked like a Ralph Lauren catalog. Exploded inside it. She was sitting behind that massive desk, looking at me over the rim of her glasses. She didn't stand up. She didn't offer a hand. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice smooth as silk and cold as ice. "I understand you're under the impression that there's some sort of clerical error. Regarding our boundaries, it's not an impression," I said, dropping a printout of the 1954 deed on her desk. "And it's not an error. You're sitting on 1,200 acres of private land." "My land," Evelyn chuckled. It was a dismissive, patronizing sound. She opened a drawer and slid a glossy map across the desk. "This is the 2018 county survey, Mr. Thorne. As you can see, the Thorne estate, or what's left of it, begins 100 yards south of here. Whispering Pines was developed on unclaimed, county-auctioned land. We have clear title, verified by the county recorder." I looked at the map. It was dated March 2018. My grandfather died in November 2017. My grandfather never sold this land, I said, and he paid taxes on it until the day he died. You can't just resurvey property lines because the owner died and you thought no one was looking. Evelyn's smile tightened. The original surveys from the 50s were notoriously inaccurate, relying on trees and rocks that move. We modernized the lines. The county approved it. We have 50 families living here, Mr. Thorne. Good families. We have a community. You have, what? A piece of paper and a nostalgia for a grandfather you clearly didn't care enough to visit while he was alive? That hit low. She knew. She had done her homework. "You're trespassing," I said, my voice low. "And I'm going to prove it." "You're welcome to try," she said, leaning back. "But let me give you some advice, young man. We have lawyers on retainer who cost more per hour than you make in a month. We have the county's blessing. And we have 50 homeowners who will see you as the monster trying to steal their retirement homes. Go back to Seattle. Take the check for the timber rights on the south acreage and leave the adults alone." I walked out of there shaking. I spent the night at a motel in the nearest town. I couldn't sleep. I sat up with my laptop, pulling every public record I could find on Whispering Pines. That's when the notification popped up on my phone. A Facebook tag. I opened it. It was a post on the Whispering Pines community page. A photo of me taken by the guard at the gate with a caption written by Evelyn Sterling. "Alert to residents. We had a disturbance today. A young man from the city is claiming to own our community. He is attempting to extort the association based on outdated paperwork. He is aggressive and unstable. If you see him, do not engage. Call security immediately. We will not let a con artist threaten our homes." The comments were brutal. "Get a job, loser. I'll shoot him if he steps on my lawn. Protect our kids." She was weaponizing the residents. She was turning me into a predator to hide the fact that she was the parasite. The next morning, I woke up to a pounding on my motel door. I looked through the peephole. 3 men, big guys, flannel shirts, arms crossed, locals. I opened the door with the chain still on. "Yeah? You the city boy trying to wreck Whispering Pines?" the lead guy asked. He had a beard like steel wool and eyes that didn't blink. "I'm the legal owner of the land," I said. "Look," he said, stepping closer to the crack in the door. My sister lives in one of those cabins. She put her life savings into it. You think you can just show up with a lawyer and kick her out? Things happen in these woods, man. Cars go off roads. People get lost. Seattle is a long drive. Maybe you should just turn around and go home while your tires still have air in them." He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was a promise. I closed the door and locked it. My hands were trembling, but then I looked at the table where I had spread out the tax documents Vane had given me. 70 years of receipts. My grandfather had paid for every inch of that dirt. He had preserved it. He hadn't sold out to loggers. He hadn't sold out to developers. He had held the line, and now, these people led by a woman who viewed land as a ledger entry were trying to scare me off. I pulled out my phone and dialed Vane. "Fletcher," I said when he answered. "I'm not selling. I'm not settling. I want to sue them. I want to sue them for everything. It's going to be expensive," Mason, Vane said. "And dangerous." "I don't care," I said, looking at the photo of the destroyed foundation on my phone. She made a mistake. She made this public. She tried to make me the villain. Now I'm going to show her what a forensic auditor does when he smells a rat. I packed my bag. I wasn't going home to hide. I was going to the county recorder's office. I was going to find out exactly how a 2018 survey managed to erase 1,000 to 100 acres of history. And I had a hunch that Evelyn Sterling's county blessing wasn't as legal as she claimed. When you start digging into public records, you realize that corruption isn't usually some grand, cinematic conspiracy involving shadowed figures in parking garages. Usually, it's just boring, banal paperwork signed by to people who think they're smarter than everyone else. I spent 3 days in the basement of the county clerk's office, breathing in dust and drinking terrible vending machine coffee. I wasn't looking for a smoking gun. I was looking for a pattern. I pulled the deed history for every single property in the county. I pulled the employment records for the county land office. And then, at 2 p.m. on a Thursday, I found it. The 2018 survey, the one Evelyn Sterling waved in my face like a shield, was signed off by a deputy recorder named Julian Sterling. Sterling. The name was common enough. But in a town this size, I did a quick background check. Julian Sterling was Evelyn's cousin. But that wasn't the kicker. The kicker was the bank records. I couldn't access his personal accounts, obviously, but I could look at the formation documents for the HOA. The Lakeshore Pines Development LLC was registered 2 months after my grandfather died. And the initial funding, it didn't come from investors. It came from a series of loans secured against the land itself, loans that were approved based on the fraudulent survey Julian signed. They had used my grandfather's land as collateral to borrow the money to steal it. I took photos of everything. The signatures, the dates, the LLC registration. Then I called Sarah Jenkins. Vane had referred me to her. She was a property litigation shark in Seattle who specialized in quiet title actions. When I told her what I found, she didn't just listen. She started laughing. A cold, predatory laugh. "Mason," she said, "this isn't just trespassing. This is RICO. This is wire fraud. This is a conspiracy to defraud the government and the banks. If we play this right, we don't just get the land back. We send them to prison. We filed the lawsuit the next week. We didn't give them a warning. We dropped a 90-page complaint on the HOA's doorstep, naming Evelyn Sterling, Julian Sterling, and the entire board as defendants. We asked for an immediate injunction to freeze all assets. The reaction was explosive. My phone blew up with threats, hate mail, and sob stories. The local news picked it up. Air battles homeowners in David vs. Goliath fight. Except they tried to paint me as Goliath. But I had one more card to play. I needed Evelyn to admit she knew the survey was fake. I requested a settlement meeting. Sarah advised against it, but I told her to trust me. I met Evelyn at a neutral location, a coffee shop in the nearby town. She walked in looking tired. The cracks were starting to show in her porcelain armor. "You're ruining lives, Mr. Thornton," she hissed, skipping the pleasantries. "Property values are plummeting. People can't sell their homes because of the title cloud you created. Are you happy?" "I'm just correcting an error, Evelyn," I said, leaning in. my phone recording in my chest pocket. But I'm willing to make it go away. I just need to know one thing. Why 2018? Why did you wait until the spring? She scoffed. Because the old man finally died in the winter. We couldn't risk him coming up to check the fences. We knew the estate would be in chaos. It was the only window we had to get the survey stamped before an heir showed up. We thought we had a year. We didn't expect you. She stopped. Her eyes went wide. She realized what she had said. Thank you, Evelyn, I said, standing up. That's all I needed. You can't use that, she whispered, her voice trembling. That's privileged. It's a conversation in a public place, Evelyn. And you just admitted to predatory intent. I walked out, leaving her staring at her latte like it was poisoned. The preliminary hearing was a bloodbath. The courtroom was packed. All the residents were there, the angry guy with the beard, the crying grandmothers, the young couples holding babies. They looked at me with pure hatred. I felt sick, honestly. I didn't want to hurt them, but I couldn't let Evelyn win. The judge was a no-nonsense woman named Judge Holloway. She looked at the two maps Sarah projected on the screen. Mr. Defense Counsel, Judge Holloway said, peering over her glasses, can you explain why the property line jumped to 100 meters south for months after the previous owner's death? Evelyn's lawyer stood up, sweating. Your Honor, it was a correction of a historical inaccuracy. The topography, save it, the judge snapped. I've reviewed the plaintiff's evidence, specifically Exhibit C, the financial transfer from the HOA's development fund to the personal account of the county recorder who approved this survey. A gasp went through the courtroom. The residents turned to look at Evelyn. She was staring straight ahead, stone-faced, and the judge continued. I have listened to the recording submitted by the plaintiff. It paints a picture of deliberate, calculated fraud. Judge Holloway looked at the gallery. To the residents of Whispering Pines, I am sorry. You have been lied to. You purchased property from a seller who did not own it. Your deeds are invalid. Pandemonium. People were shouting, crying. The angry bearded guy stood up and pointed at Evelyn. You told us it was clean. You told us the title was insured. Evelyn shrank in her seat. The judge hammered the gavel. Order. I am granting the plaintiff's motion for summary judgment. The land belongs to Mason Thorne. The HOA is hereby dissolved, and its assets are frozen to pay restitution. Mrs. Sterling, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. It was over. I had won. But as I walked out of the courtroom, I didn't feel triumphant. I saw a young mom crying on a bench, holding a toddler. She looked up at me, terror in her eyes. Are you going to evict us? She asked. We have nowhere to go. I looked at her. I thought about my grandfather. Silas Thorne was a hard man, but he was a fair man. He hated thieves, but he protected the vulnerable. He wouldn't want his legacy to be a ghost town of evicted families. I sat down next to her. What's your name? Jessica, she sniffled. Jessica, I'm not going to evict you. I said loud enough for the others to hear. I turned to the crowd of residents who were glaring at me. Listen up, I shouted. The hallway went quiet. Evelyn Sterling stole from me, and she stole from you. She sold you stolen goods. But I'm not going to bulldoze your homes. I looked at Sarah, my lawyer. She nodded, knowing what I was about to do. I'm setting up a land trust, I said. The 1,200 acres stays under my name. The forest, the lake, that stays wild. No more development, no more expansion. But the footprint where your cabins are, I'm offering you a 99-year lease. You pay a fair ground rent, a lot less than your HOA fees were, and you get to stay. The money goes into a conservation fund to protect the rest of the land. The tension in the hallway broke like a fever. People started crying, shaking hands. The angry bearded guy walked up to me. He looked at the floor, then at me. I threatened you. He grunted. You were protecting your sister. I said, I get it. He stuck out a hand. You're a better man than her. A hell of a better man. 6 months later, the dust has settled. Evelyn Sterling is serving 5 years for fraud and embezzlement. Her cousin Julian is right there with her. The Whispering Pines sign is gone. I tore it down myself with a chainsaw. It felt great. I rebuilt my grandfather's cabin on the original foundation. It's small, simple, just wood and glass. I sit there on weekends, drinking coffee, looking out at the lake. The marina is gone. I made them tear it down to restore the shoreline. But the families are still there. They wave when they see me. We have a community now, a real one, not a corporation. I learned a lot about legacy through all of this. I used to think legacy was just money or land. It's not. Legacy is what you do when you have the power to destroy, but you choose to build instead. I could have burned them all down. I could have been right and cruel, but I chose to be right and kind. And let me tell you, sitting here on Silas's porch, listening to the wind in the trees that he saved and I protected, that feels like the richest inheritance in the world. So, here's my question to you guys. If you found out your house was built on stolen land and the real owner showed up, what would you do? Would you fight them or would you join them? Let me know in the comments. And remember, always check your property lines. This is Mason Thorne, signing off from the deep woods. Stay wild.